Have you ever felt like you're playing a game and literally everyone knows the rules except for you? Yeah, we've all been there. In the unspoken world of human dynamics, the stakes are just incredibly high. Yet, most of us are operating completely blind. We're reacting to shadows instead of substance. So today, we're going to decode the raw, unfiltered architecture of human interaction. We're stripping away all the social fluff to look directly at the actual mechanics of power, presence, and relational tension. Okay, let's dive into this. Words are smoke, but action reveals the truth. That's the foundational philosophy of our source material today. Look, we live in a world that is frankly obsessed with dialogue. We constantly negotiate, argue, text, and explain everything. But the source material makes this really ruthless observation. Relying on verbal communication to gauge someone's true intent is pretty much a guaranteed path to losing your leverage. So, ask yourself this. Why do we trust what people say when their actions tell a completely different story? Seriously, think about it for a second. How many times have you listened to an excuse or fully believed a promise while the person standing right in front of you was physically disengaging or crossing your boundaries? Our reliance on verbal confirmation just traps us in an illusion. All right, moving into part one, the trap of words versus the reality of action. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference. We're contrasting the really chaotic, kind of deceptive surface level of what people say with the undeniable biological reality of what they actually do. When people rely on verbal traps, they often mistake over-explaining and seeking permission for just being flexible. But in intense relational dynamics, this flexibility is frequently just a code word for negotiating your own value. In contrast, behavioral reality is physical. It's movement. It's someone actually investing by following your lead. Now, if you prioritize verbal negotiation, you fall squarely into what the source calls the nice guy trap. And this happens when you're prioritizing someone else's social comfort over your own leadership. You end up taking their verbal excuses, those little gatekeeper lines, entirely literally. You flinch or get defensive when they test you with assumptions. And honestly, worst of all, you go back to people who've already rejected your boundaries. It's essentially biting the gold twice when the first bite already proved it was made of lead. So how do we escape this? Well, you've got to adopt an absolute ironclad rule. Action equals truth. It's the principle that a person's physical response, their actual behavioral follow-through, is literally the only reliable metric of their intent. If their words say maybe, but their feet aren't moving toward you, the answer is no. You must believe their actions the very first time, completely disregarding any contradictory verbal excuses they might throw your way. The source outlines a really effective way to apply this, which boils down to a simple behavioral test. Step 1, set a physical boundary. Just ask them to take a 5-foot step towards you, or complete a very simple physical gesture. Step 2, observe if they actually step into your domain. Do they comply with the movement? And step 3 is the absolutely critical one. If they say no, or even if they just hesitate, believe them instantly and withdraw. This simple filter instantly weeds out the time wasters and attention seekers. Listen to this. Explaining is an emotional white flag. The absolute second you start defending your actions, selling yourself, or trying to logic someone into respecting you, you've surrendered. You have stepped right into their reality, handed them all the leverage, and basically signaled that your value depends on their approval. We've got to stop reporting to people like we're their subordinates. Which brings us to part 2, the void and strategic absence. So, if words are just a trap, how do you actually command respect and build attraction without constantly arguing for it? Well, the source defines the answer as strategic absence. It is the intentional withdrawal of your presence and your communication. And no, this isn't about playing petty little games. It's about building emotional hunger and tension. Mystery is kind of a dying art these days, but when you step back and create a void, you're forcing the other person's imagination to do the heavy lifting. You become a blank canvas for their anticipation. Silence triggers surrender. It really does. In the face of a reality battle, when someone tests you with a slick comment, an attitude, or just pure emotional chaos, silence is your sharpest tool. It resets boundaries instantly because it physically demonstrates that you are entirely unmoved by their chaos. You aren't rattled at all. You are a fortress. The power of this void is just massive. By holding back your attention, you create this vacuum that naturally pulls people right towards you. It sparks a sort of natural competitive urgency. It triggers that primal fear of replacement. Instead of you pushing your agenda on them, the void forces them to confront their own emotional hunger. And beautifully enough, it acts as an amazing filter. The people who are just seeking free attention will wander off, while true participants will actually step up to fill the space. This all fundamentally comes down to mindset. A scarcity mindset operates on overavailability, right? Oversharing, and jumping up to answer every single text or demand immediately. But over-delivering in those setup stages absolutely kills the very tension required for a genuine connection. An abundance mindset, however, means you set the terms. You ignore the arbitrary timelines imposed by other people. You let them wait. You trust that your presence is actually valuable enough to be earned. As the source puts it, you are the opportunity. If they don't see it, you don't explain it. You simply withdraw your presence. Your time, your energy, and your attention, those are privileges. If someone disrespects that privilege, you don't argue with them. You simply remove the opportunity. All right, let's move into part 3, the internal fortress. Up to this point, we've basically been talking about external mechanics. But listen, none of that actually works without the internal psychological progression of mastering yourself. Think about this. What happens when the fear of loss controls your actions? When you are absolutely terrified of someone walking away or terrified of a negative opinion, you begin to negotiate your own dignity. You abandon your standards just to keep the peace. The fear of losing external validation is, without a doubt, the single biggest destroyer of personal power. To stop negotiating your own dignity, you absolutely must build the internal fortress. Here's how you do it. Step 1, empty the cup. You've got to silence the mental noise, the victimhood, and that desperate need for external advice. Step 2, shift your focus entirely to internal self-worth. Your value has to be self-derived. It cannot be dependent on anyone else's approval. And step 3, radically accept your current truth, whatever that happens to be, and start building brick by brick right from that solid ground. This brings us to what the source calls the highway rule. You've got to operate from a completely centered reality with non-negotiable standards. You see, a true leader trusts that their lead is the best experience for everyone involved. You don't beg for respect. You simply offer an invitation into your world. And if someone cannot or will not align with your standard, you show them the exit immediately. It's my way or the highway. When you operate like that, rejection completely changes its meaning. I mean, psychologically, human beings are hardwired to process social rejection in the exact same part of the brain that processes actual physical pain. It literally hurts. But the source asks us to reframe this entirely. A no is actually a blessing in abundance. It's just a highly efficient filter. When someone rejects your boundary or says no to your lead, they are doing you a massive favor. They are saving you from taking responsibility for someone who does not align with your world. Ultimately, they're saving you time. Now, what's really interesting about this is the profound power in sacrifice. It is better to stand alone in the storm of loneliness than to live as a prisoner in someone else's reality. To truly embody this mindset, you have to be willing to walk away. You have to be willing to burn the boats. Because if you can't tolerate standing alone, you are always going to be manipulated by those who threaten to leave you. But, it's really important to understand the evolution of these dynamics over time. Short-term tactics, stuff like strategic silence, pushing back on tests, heavy mystery, those are great tools to break through chaos and establish respect early on. But the long-term game requires evolution. The source actually calls this becoming the Walmart of emotions, meaning you're providing a full spectrum of experience. Once loyalty is proven, you transition from friction to profound presence, creating this incredibly secure space where true connection can actually thrive. But honestly, whether it's day 1 or year 10, the foundational rule never changes. Master the man in the mirror. The game of human dynamics is eternal. Tests are always going to come. Chaos is always going to arise. The only reality you truly have permanent control over is your own internal focus and your own unshakable standards. So the crucial point is this: success is about controlling yourself, not controlling them. If you're spending all your energy trying to manipulate how other people see you, well, you've already lost. True power is the absolute refusal to adjust your reality just to appease someone else's dysfunction. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If you stop seeking permission to exist today, what reality will you build tomorrow? The very second you stop waiting for the world to validate you, you become the architect of your own domain. Empty the cup, hold the line, and let your actions speak the absolute only truth that matters. Keep learning, keep building that internal fortress, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.